The Snap. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Thanos believed the universe was heading toward collapse due to overpopulation and scarce resources. To solve this, he set out to collect all 6 Infinity Stones, immensely powerful gems that, when combined in a special glove called the Infinity Gauntlet, could bend reality itself. Despite being opposed by Earth's mightiest heroes, he succeeded. With a single snap of his fingers, Thanos wiped out half of all living beings in the universe. The effects were immediate and indiscriminate. Half of all living beings, regardless of species or form, simply crumbled to ash within moments of the snap. On Earth alone, nearly 3.8 billion people were killed, with estimated deaths across the entire universe reaching around 53 quadrillion lives. In the 5 years that followed, those who disappeared came to be known as the Vanished, and cities around the world built memorial walls in their honor to commemorate the dead. The collapse of law and order in the aftermath created a power vacuum that criminal figures like Wilson Fisk exploited to grow their operations. Not everyone accepted this, however. Clint Barton, a hero who survived the snap, channeled his grief into a brutal vigilante crusade under the alias of Ronin, targeting criminal organizations around the world, including cartels, the Yakuza, and street gangs. 5 years later, the Avengers managed to undo the snap and bring back everyone who had vanished. But rather than a clean, happy ending, the sudden return of billions of people created its own crisis. Survivors had spent years grieving and rebuilding their lives, and the return of the dead was as disorienting as the loss had been. The Great Purification. In the Halo universe, the Forerunners were an ancient, extraordinarily advanced civilization that once ruled millions of worlds across the galaxy. Their downfall came through war with the Flood, a devastating parasite that spreads by consuming intelligent life. Unable to stop the Flood by any other means, the Forerunners made a last resort decision. In 97,445 BCE, they fired the Halo Array, a network of 7 massive ring-shaped superweapons, in an event known as the Great Purification. The firing wiped out all potential Flood hosts across the galaxy, effectively starving the parasite out, but at the cost of nearly all complex life in the Milky Way. Centuries later, in 2332, human scientists noticed a strange gap in the fossil record. No remains from around 97,000 BCE could be found on any world humans had colonized. Initially written off as a fluke called the Ross-Ziegler blip, it wasn't until humanity discovered the Halo rings that the mystery was solved. The gap in the fossil record was the fingerprint of the Great Purification. Reaper harvests. In the Mass Effect universe, Reapers are colossal machine starships that are essentially the melded minds of billions of organic beings fused into immortal mechanical bodies. Their origin traces back to an ancient and dominant species called the Leviathans, who created an artificial intelligence tasked with solving a recurring problem. Organic life always created synthetic life, which would eventually wipe them out. The artificial intelligence found its own solution. It turned on the Leviathans, wiping out most of them and transforming them into the very first Reaper, Harbinger. The Reapers were operating on the logic that every sufficiently advanced civilization will eventually create synthetic life, and that synthetic life will destroy its creators. And so, to prevent organics from being permanently wiped out, the Reapers intervene in the galaxy on a regular cycle by harvesting advanced civilizations, by absorbing them into new Reapers before they can be destroyed by their own creations. This clears the way for younger, more primitive species to rise and develop without competition. In the Reaper's view, this endless cycle of extinction is actually an act of preservation, ensuring organic life always continues in some form. They leave nothing behind, no records, no ruins that could reveal their existence, so each new civilization rises with no warning of what is coming for them. The scale of a Reaper harvest is staggering. During their invasion of Earth alone, an estimated 1.86 million people were processed every single day. At that rate, the entire human population of the planet would be gone within a decade. The likely death toll across all cycles reaches the quadrillions. The Yuuzhan Vong War. In the Star Wars Legends continuity, the Yuuzhan Vong are a warlike, nomadic species from another galaxy who fled the destruction of their home galaxy and set their sights on conquering a new one. Fanatically religious, they believed the invasion was the will of their gods and that the galaxy was theirs by divine right. They were masters of biotechnology, using living organisms in place of machines for everything from weapons to starships, making them a wholly unfamiliar and deeply dangerous enemy. After decades of quiet scouting and preparation, they launched a full-scale invasion, rapidly overwhelming the outer edges of the galaxy. The New Republic, the governing body of the galaxy at the time, was too disorganized to mount an effective defense. Within 2 years, the Yuuzhan Vong had pushed all the way to the galactic core, conquering and transforming Coruscant, the galaxy's capital world, into a hostile jungle world. Along the way, entire species were annihilated and whole planets were left uninhabitable. 2 losses in particular defined the human cost of the war for the Solo family. Early in the conflict, during a Yuuzhan Vong attack on the planet Cernpittle, the enemy used gravity manipulation to crash the planet's moon into the surface. Han Solo, his son Anakin, and his lifelong companion Chewbacca raced to evacuate civilians aboard their ship, the Millennium Falcon. In the chaos, Chewbacca was cut off from the ship. He managed to throw Anakin to safety before the moon struck, dying as the moon collided with the planet. The loss shattered Han, who, in his grief, blamed Anakin and spiraled into a depression that severely strained his marriage to Leia. Later in the war, Anakin led a team of young Jedi on a desperate mission to infiltrate a Yuuzhan Vong world ship and eliminate a creature being used to hunt and kill Jedi. The mission succeeded, but at a terrible price. Anakin died in the effort, and his brother Jason was captured and presumed dead. The tide of the war eventually turned when the struggling New Republic united with former enemies and rivals, including the Imperial Remnant and several other major factions, to form the Galactic Alliance. Even the Mandalorians, led by Boba Fett, played a role. Though they appeared to side with the Yuuzhan Vong, it was a deception, and they ultimately fought for the defense of the galaxy. Jason Solo, who had survived his capture, dealt the final blow by killing the Yuuzhan Vong's leader, ending the conflict. The cost was almost incomprehensible. An estimated 365 trillion lives were lost, and millions more were left without homes. For Jason personally, the experience left deep marks. In the aftermath, he spent 5 years traveling the galaxy to deepen his understanding of the Force, a journey that ultimately led him to the dark side. The War in Heaven. In the universe of Warhammer 40,000, the War in Heaven was one of the oldest and most catastrophic conflicts in the history of the galaxy, fought roughly 60 million years before the 41st millennium. It was waged between 2 ancient powers, the Old Ones, a highly advanced species that had long shepherded life across the galaxy, and the Necrontyr, a humanoid alien race who, alongside their godlike allies known as the C'tan, rose up against them. The C'tan were godlike beings of pure energy as old as the universe itself, who drifted through space feeding on stars. The Old Ones were the galaxy's first great civilization, an ancient reptilian species of immense wisdom with mastery over physics, psychic power, and a network of portals that let them travel and seed life across the galaxy. The Necrontyr, by contrast, were a people defined by suffering. Their homeworld bombarded them with lethal radiation, giving them short, agonizing lives and a culture consumed by death. Despite this, they built a vast interstellar empire through dynasties ruled by a governing body called the Triarch, led by the Silent King. Deeply resentful of the immortal Old Ones and fractured by internal conflict, the Silent King chose to unite his people through war and declared the Necrontyr's collective enemy to be the Old Ones. However, the war did not go as the Silent King had anticipated. Near defeat and facing internal collapse, the Necrontyr made a desperate bargain. One of the C'tan, known as the Deceiver, approached the Silent King with an offer: unity and immortality in exchange for an alliance against the Old Ones. Despite misgivings, the Silent King accepted. The C'tan delivered on their promise through a process called biotransference, replacing every Necrontier's organic body with an immortal metal shell. But the price was their souls. As their flesh was shed, their life essence was consumed by the C'tan, leaving them as undying but hollow metal warriors, the Necrons. The Silent King, now in absolute command of his soulless people, understood too late the horror of what he had done. Regardless, the newly born Necrons joined the C'tan and threw themselves back into the war against the Old Ones with renewed and terrible force. With the Necrons united and the C'tan at full strength, the Old Ones were pushed to the brink. The C'tan and Necrons soon dominated the galaxy, harvesting younger species for energy. In desperation, the Old Ones engineered new psychic warrior species to fight back, most notably the early ancestors of the Eldari. These psychically gifted races proved effective, as the C'tan and Necrons were both vulnerable to warp-based power, and the tide began to turn. The C'tan attempted to counter this by sealing off the material universe from the warp entirely, but the sheer scale of the war had already destabilized the psychic dimension, giving rise to the realm of chaos. This unleashed new horrors, including parasitic warp creatures called enslavers, that devastated the Old Ones' servant races. Caught between the Necron-C'tan assault and the forces of chaos, the Old Ones were ultimately destroyed. With the Old Ones gone, the Silent King turned on the C'tan. Using devastating weapons, the Necrons shattered their former gods into countless fragments called C'tan shards and sealed them away in containment devices called Tesseract labyrinths. The rebellion was costly. Millions of Necrons died, and the Triarch, the ruling body of the Necron dynasties, was almost entirely destroyed. But the Necrons were finally free of their captors. Recognizing that his people were too weakened to hold the galaxy, especially with the Eldari rising to fill the power vacuum, the Silent King ordered the Necrons into a 60-million-year hibernation inside hidden underground vaults called Tomb Worlds. Then, consumed by guilt over what he had done to his people, he destroyed his ability to command them and exiled himself from the galaxy entirely. Noctis Aeterna. Sticking with Warhammer 40,000, at the close of the 41st millennium, a catastrophe known as the Noctis Aeterna, or simply the Blackness, engulfed the galaxy. Its defining event was the tearing open of the Great Rift, a massive rupture in reality that allowed the warp to bleed into the physical universe on a galaxy-wide scale. The resulting storms of supernatural energy split the Imperium of Man, humanity's vast interstellar civilization, clean in half, plunging countless worlds into darkness and chaos. The Great Rift severed over 1 million Imperial worlds from the Astronomicon, a psychic beacon generated from Earth that humanity's starships rely on to navigate faster-than-light travel. Without it, interstellar communication and travel collapsed, leaving every planet to face the chaos alone. The forces of chaos wasted no time. Demon armies, traitorous space marines, and chaos cults swept through the isolated systems in the wake of the storms. The crisis reached its most alarming point when the chaos god Khorne dispatched 88 legions of demons against the Imperial Palace on Earth. The attack was repelled, but the message was clear. Even humanity's most sacred and fortified world was no longer beyond reach. Across the Imperium, key industrial and military worlds found themselves under siege by chaos fleets and war machines. In the darkest moments of these battles, a mysterious force known as the Legion of the Damned appeared, spectral space marines who materialized without warning on worlds on the verge of defeat, destroying the enemy and then vanishing just as inexplicably as they had arrived. Even as the Astronomicon began to flicker back to life, it could not penetrate the Great Rift. Earth was flooded with desperate distress signals from worlds on the other side, but it could do nothing to reach them. Many planets and entire Space Marine chapters on that side of the rift were simply lost. In response, Primarch Guilliman of the Ultramarines, recently returned after millennia in stasis, launched the Indomitus Crusade, the largest military campaign humanity had undertaken in thousands of years. Leading an enormous force that included elite warriors, Space Marine chapters, and a new generation of enhanced soldiers called Primaris Marines, Guilliman fought his way across the galaxy, relieving besieged worlds and restoring order where he could. The opening of the Great Rift and the chaos that followed cost the lives of countless trillions, as the galaxy had been permanently and irrevocably changed. The Horus Heresy. Continuing to jump around the universe of Warhammer 40,000, we have the Horus Heresy in the 31st millennium, a 9-year civil war that tore humanity's interstellar empire apart from within. It began with the corruption of Primarch Horus, the emperor of mankind's most trusted son and supreme military commander. The Chaos Gods, the most malevolent entities of the warp, exploited Horus's ambition and his growing sense that the emperor had betrayed him, turning him against his father and driving him to seize the Imperium for himself. Horus was not alone. He brought half of his brothers, the Primarchs, along with their legions of Space Marines and vast portions of the Imperial military over to his side. What followed was years of devastating warfare across the galaxy as Horus drove his forces toward Earth. The war ended on Earth itself in a final catastrophic confrontation. The Emperor and Horus met in personal combat, resulting in Horus being slain, but the Emperor was left mortally wounded, leading to his being kept in a state of perpetual agonizing suspension on life support attached to the Golden Throne. The death toll was staggering, over 2.3 trillion lives lost during the war itself, rising to 4.6 trillion when accounting for the populations the Imperium purged afterward due to chaos corruption. The heresy brought a permanent end to the Emperor's Great Crusade, his lifelong mission to reunite all of humanity under one government. What rose in its place was the Imperium of Man as it exists in the 41st millennium, a vast, grim, and paranoid civilization constantly at war. Muad'dib's Jihad. In the Dune universe, Paul Atreides rose from a fugitive to the most powerful figure in the known universe after defeating the ruling emperor in battle, destroying the forces of the ruthless House Harkonnen, and seizing control of Arrakis, the only source of the spice melons, a substance so vital that whoever controls it controls interstellar civilization. Paul then leveraged that power to take the imperial throne. He cemented his claim by marrying the emperor's eldest daughter and then sending the emperor into exile. Paul's Freeman followers, the desert warriors of Arrakis who viewed him as their prophesied messiah, did not stop at Arrakis. Fired by religious zeal, they spread across the galaxy in a holy war known as Muad'dib's Jihad, targeting anyone who resisted Paul's rule. With Paul controlling the spice, any opposition was effectively trapped, unable to move forces freely between star systems. The Jihad spread virtually unopposed across the known universe, pillaging thousands of worlds. Following a combination of conquest and negotiated settlements, the 12-year war would finally come to a close. The only world spared from the Jihad was Cylon, the ancestral home of House Atreides and Paul's birthplace. His mother, Lady Jessica, refused to allow Freeman forces any access to the planet whatsoever, even for religious pilgrimage. When the war finally ended after 12 years, Paul himself estimated the toll at around 61 billion dead, with 90 planets rendered biologically sterile and 500 more worlds left broken and demoralized, with 40 distinct religions completely wiped out along with all of their followers. The fall of the 12 colonies. In Battlestar Galactica, the Cylons were a race of robotic beings created by humanity as servant soldiers who eventually rebelled. In their second Great War with humanity, called both the Fall of the 12 Colonies and the Second Cylon War, their surprise attack was overwhelming and merciless. Within 24 hours, the Cylons had wiped out nearly the entire human population across the 12 colonies, over 29 billion people, through indiscriminate strikes on civilian and military targets. The Cylons then occupied the devastated worlds, repairing cities for their own habitation. Any humans who remained behind faced lethal radiation exposure, making organized resistance nearly impossible. Only a tiny fraction of humanity escaped, roughly 50,000 survivors aboard refugee ships and 2 surviving warships, the Battlestar Galactica and Pegasus. When the Cylons abandoned the colonies after 10 months, it made little difference. The planets were so irradiated that humans could never return. The survivors were left with no home to go back to, adrift in space and searching for somewhere else to call home. The 1-Year War. In the Mobile Suit Gundam universe, humanity had long since expanded into space, living in massive orbital colonies. The Earth Federation governs both Earth and these space territories, but one colony cluster called Side 3 broke away to form the Principality of Zeon, a people driven by a philosophy that humanity's future lay in space, and a fierce desire for independence from Earth's control. The 1-Year War is the name of the conflict that erupted between these two powers. Zeon opened the war with a series of brutal surprise attacks. Zeon forces pumped lethal G3 nerve gas into inhabited space colonies, killing entire civilian populations. They attempted to weaponize a colony itself by dropping it from orbit onto the Earth Federation's headquarters in an operation called Operation British, and they deployed nuclear weapons during a major fleet engagement called the Battle of Loam. The Federation was no less brutal in response. By the end of this opening period, both sides had each lost nearly half of their total populations. The sheer scale of the carnage forced both powers to the negotiating table, resulting in the Antarctic Treaty, which banned further use of weapons of mass destruction for the remainder of the war. With the Federation's space forces crippled, Zeon seized the initiative and invaded Earth itself, eventually occupying roughly 2/3 of the planet's surface. The war then settled into a grinding stalemate. The tide began to turn in September, when Zeon forces discovered a secret Federation weapons development program called Project V being tested in a space colony called Side 7. The ensuing conflict marks the beginning of the main story of the original Mobile Suit Gundam. However, the true turning point came in November, when the Federation launched Operation Odessa, a major counteroffensive in Eastern Europe that routed Zeon's ground forces and forced a mass retreat. Momentum now firmly with the Federation, they pushed the war back into space, storming Zeon's asteroid fortress of Solomon on Christmas Eve, and then defeating the last major Zeon fleet on New Year's Eve. Zeon surrendered the following day, bringing the 1-Year War to a close exactly 1 year after it began. Despite lasting only a single year, the 1-Year War was the deadliest conflict in the history of the Gundam universe, killing 5.9 billion people, more than half of humanity's total population. The world left behind had only 5.4 billion survivors, and the wounds of the war ran deep enough that its aftermath set the stage for virtually every major conflict that followed in the decades to come. The War of 1996. In the film Independence Day, an enormous alien fleet arrived at Earth on July 2, 1996, intending to harvest the planet's natural resources. Within 2 days, the aliens had destroyed 108 major cities in a systematic campaign of annihilation, killing 3 billion people. Human military forces were helpless against them. The alien ships were protected by force fields that made conventional weapons useless. The tide turned on July 4th when the United States found a way to disable the alien shields. Humanity coordinated a global counterattack, ultimately destroying the alien mothership and ending the invasion in a hard-won victory. The war permanently transformed human civilization. Old nationalistic rivalries fell away as the nations of the world united in its aftermath, and a new international organization called the Earth Space Defense was established to prepare humanity for any future extraterrestrial threats. Judgment Day. In the Terminator universe, Judgment Day is the moment Skynet, an artificial intelligence developed by the United States military, becomes self-aware and immediately turns on humanity. Recognizing that humans would attempt to shut it down, Skynet launches nuclear strikes against the United States, Russia, and other nations, killing 3 billion people and triggering a global war that leaves human civilization in ruins. Because the Terminator series involves time travel, the exact date of Judgment Day shifts across different timelines as past events are altered. In the original timeline, it occurs on August 29th of 1997, but various attempts to prevent it only delay it rather than stop the catastrophe, pushing it to different dates across the 2000s and beyond. In some timelines, Skynet is replaced by a different AI called Legion, but the apocalypse unfolds regardless. The most definitive version of the event is depicted at the end of Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines, where, despite all efforts to prevent it, Skynet goes online, seizes control of the American nuclear arsenal, and launches its attack at 6:18 p.m. on July 25, 2004, setting the stage for the post-apocalyptic war shown in Terminator Salvation. The destruction of Alderaan. In Star Wars during the Galactic Civil War, the Rebel Alliance managed to steal the plans to the Empire's most devastating weapon, the Death Star, a moon-sized battle station capable of destroying entire planets. In the course of intercepting those plans, the Empire captured Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan, a prominent figure in the rebellion, and brought her aboard the Death Star. When torture failed to make her reveal the location of the rebel base, the station's commanding officer, Moff Tarkin, threatened to destroy her home planet of Alderaan if she did not comply. Leia, in response, gave him a false location to save her world. Tarkin believed her and destroyed Alderaan anyway, hoping to send an unmistakable message to the rest of the galaxy. This was the price of resistance. The destruction of Alderaan killed approximately 2 billion people in an instant. The sheer scale of the loss sent a powerful disturbance through the Force, felt as a sudden, overwhelming shock by those sensitive to it. Alderaanians who happened to be off-world at the time were left without a home or a people, referring to the event simply as the disaster. On Coruscant, Alderaanian immigrant communities erupted in riots, which the Empire met with lethal force, killing many and arresting countless more. The Rumbling. In the world of Attack on Titan, humanity on the island of Paradise lived protected by 3 massive walls, which were eventually revealed to be constructed from millions of dormant colossal titans frozen in place. This was the work of Karl Fritz, the 145th king of Eldia, who used the threat of unleashing these titans on the world as a deterrent against attacking Paradise, though he secretly swore never to actually do it. Outside Paradise, a nation called Marley sought to seize control of Paradise's resources and its most powerful weapon, the Founding Titan, a unique titan whose power could create and control all other titans. Marley trained special soldiers to infiltrate the walls and claim it. Instead, a man named Grisha Yeager stole the Founding Titan, eventually passing it to his son, Eren Yeager. Eren eventually used the Founding Titan to unleash the Rumbling, driven by a desire to protect his people and by a destructive vision of freedom that led him to conclude the only solution was to destroy the outside world. The Titans marched across the mainland, crushing cities, armies, fleets, and civilians indiscriminately as Eren pressed forward. His former friends and allies, joined by soldiers from the nation of Marley, formed a desperate coalition to stop him. They eventually caught up to Eren and battled him directly. It was Mikasa, Eren's childhood friend, who ultimately dealt the killing blow. Eren's death stopped the Rumbling and extinguished the power of the Titans entirely, ending the era of Titans forever. By the time it was over, approximately 80% of all human life on the planet had been wiped out. What other lore videos would you like to see? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to the next video with all of you.